Hello traders, welcome to the Nexoel Trading Hub YouTube channel. So we're going to be looking at the forecast for the coming week, and this is the dollar index. This is the monthly time frame. So clearly what we can see, we've identified the fair value gap here in the monthly time frame, how we saw price mitigated that. We have a full mitigation of the monthly fair value gap, and we saw the bearish reaction of price to the downside. For the past 2 weeks, we identified the bullish monthly fair value gap as the draw on liquidity. And clearly we can see how price dropped into the monthly fair value gap, which was identified as our internal range liquidity. Now we can see here in the monthly time frame, we can see the first week of the month of March give us a bearish momentum to the downside. And what we can see, this is not the close of the monthly candlestick yet. So we can see below that we have this bullish order block, and we have this bullish monthly fair value gap, which could serve as the next drop on liquidity. So clearly now I'm not saying that price is just going to dip more lower to this fair value gap, no, because this is a monthly candle. So let's check the weekly time frame. So here in the weekly time frame, we can clearly see how price delivered to the downside into the monthly fair value gap. So we can clearly see, we've been making emphasis to the daily bearish order block and the breakout block zone over here. So here we can see that price now gave us this weekly candle that closed below the monthly bullish fair value gap. So clearly now, we are expecting to see the possibility that now the monthly bullish fair value gap is going to serve as an inversion fair value gap, and then we could see further bearish continuation to the downside. Here we have a bearish impulse to the downside. We had this bullish fair value gap here in the weekly time frame that serve as an inversion fair value gap and further sponsored bearishness to the downside. So clearly this is the next drawn liquidity from the monthly time frame. So what I'm expecting to see is the possibility of a bull move to the upside to mitigate this as an inversion fair value gap, and then we have the bearish continuation to the downside. So let's check the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, what we can clearly see is that price is reacting at this down close candle before the bullish movement to the upside. Last week I pointed out this down close candle before the bullishness, which is in confluence to the monthly bullish fair value gap, which serves as a drawn liquidity, where we're expecting to see how price dips into that and the possibility of a bullish move. But here we can see a very strong bearish impulse. Last week I didn't really expect that this bearish impulse was just going to happen so impulsively and immediately, but then that happened so impulsively. Now we can see we are having this kind of a rejection movement to the upside. So for the coming week, I'm expecting to see the possibility that we could see price pushed into this monthly bullish fair value gap, which is going to serve now as an inversion fair value gap, and then we see the bearish continuation to the downside. Or we could just see price may take out sell side liquidity and then dip lower, and then we could see reaction from this to the upside, and then that would determine if we're going to see bearishness to the downside. So this is just my expectation. This is what I'm pointing out and looking forward to possibly see in the dollar index, because what we can see here from the daily time frame, we have this other fair value gap also here. We have this fair value gap, which is in confluence to the inversion fair value gap. We also have this fair value gap, which is at this institutional order flow zone. So we could see the possibility of price dipping more higher into this fair value gap to possibly premium price level. And then we have the bearish continuation to the downside. But then we have to wait to see how price respects this fair value gap to help us determine if we're going to sell immediately from this fair value gap here in the daily time frame, which is also in confluence to the inversion fair value gap, because the bullish monthly fair value gap here is going to serve as an inversion fair value gap, since we're seeing volume here closed below the monthly bullish fair value gap zone. So this is all I have to show us in the dollar index. Let's check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, we can see bearishness to the downside. So clearly, just as I've expected, and I'm projecting from the higher time frame, which is the weekly and the daily time frame, now we can see we're having the likelihood of a bullish movement to the upside. So we'd see how price trades into the inversion fair value gap, and then that would help us determine if price is going to dip more lower. So you can see that the fair value gap in the daily time frame above this fair value gap, which is also the inversion fair value gap, we have this bullish order block. So what I'm saying is this: that if price trades into this fair value gap, within this fair value gap, when we go to the 4-hour time frame, you're going to see that we have this up close candle before the bearishness to the downside. So price has the possibility of respecting this, and then we could see bearishness to the downside. So you can see that we have the inversion fair value gap zone, and if price decides to dip more higher, they'll be looking forward to how price respects and reacts at this up close candle before the bearish movement to the downside. So this is just a quick one in the dollar index. So let's check out the Euro USD pair. This is Euro USD, and this is a weekly time frame. So we can clearly see price reacted at the monthly bullish fair value gap, which also we can see that in the weekly time frame, and we had the bullish impulse to the upside. So we had this as the drawn liquidity that we had from previous 3 weeks forecast. So, and we can see how price then gave us the movement to the upside into that fair value gap from the monthly time frame, which was our drawn liquidity from previous 3 weeks that we've been identifying the likelihood of price trading to this monthly bearish fair value gap. And now we can see how price traded to that. We can see this impulsive movement last week. From the monthly time frame, we can clearly see that that was the drawn liquidity. This is the monthly fair value gap, and we refine that to the weekly perspective, and we can see the push to the upside, this rejection candles, and price give us this movement. We can see an indecision that gave us rejection to the upside, indecision, another rejection. So what we can see in the weekly time frame is the monthly bearish fair value gap, which also we can see that here in the weekly time frame is going to have served as an inversion fair value gap. So this is the next draw on liquidity that we're looking forward to. So we have this rejection block here. So price may react and give us bearishness, and then we have bullishness to the upside. So basically what I'm saying is we could see the possibility of price deepen lower, and then we have what bullish continuation to the upside in the Euro USD. So let's check the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, what we can clearly see is price reacting at this down close candle before the bullish movement to the upside. And now we had the impulse to the downside, this institutional order flow zone here. So basically we can see here we have a breakout block zone in confluence to this fair value gap. So we can see how price is facing rejection here. So we could see the dip of price to the downside. And here in the daily time frame, you can see we have this fair value gap here. We have this bullish fair value gap also. And within this candle, we have the inversion fair value gap from the monthly time frame, which is the monthly time frame bearish fair value gap. So this is actually a zone, a level identified from the 4-hour time frame or the 1-hour time frame, I think. So here we can see price is reacting at this breakout block zone. So we could see price deep to the downside. So clearly this is what I'm expecting. We could see price deep to the downside. If price doesn't dip to retest this as an inversion fair value gap, then we could see price mitigate the mean threshold of this fair value gap, and then we could see the likelihood of a bullish continuation to the upside. So this is what I have to show us in the Euro USD. Let's check the 4-hour time frame. I'm just giving us a very quick forecast. So here in the 4-hour time frame, we can clearly see back to the daily time frame. Let me show us something here in the daily time frame. We have the inducement liquidity, buy side liquidity, price return, took out the inducement. We had the 4 break of structure. Now we can see price has taken out this high points, giving us a market structure shift. So that is why I said we could see the likelihood of this pullback and then bullish continuation to the upside. So to the 4-hour time frame, we can see, last week I called our attention to this 4-hour bullish order block because we had price candle here. And then I told us to wait to see how price reacts. We should expect bullishness. But I wasn't expecting that bullishness was going to be so massive to the upside. Though we had this buy side liquidity, we've been looking forward to see that the market would take out. But then price fell previous weeks to take this buy side liquidity. So when price returned to mitigate the 4-hour bullish order block, that was when we had that massive bullishness, taking out this buy side liquidity. So here from the 4-hour time frame, here we have the sell side liquidity. We have fair value gap here in the 4-hour in confluence to the daily time frame fair value gap. So we could see price deep, and then we have the continuation. Here we have this unmitigated week, which in the 1-hour time frame, we're going to see that we have an institutional order flow. So that is it here. You can see we have this buying move before the bullishness to the upside. So here in the 1-hour time frame, we can see here price return reacted at this bullish order block. The bullish order block was retested twice, and now the 3rd time, and then price pushed to the upside. Here price is reacting at the zone we identified from the daily time frame, which is the breaker block zone. In the weekly time frame is the rejection block zone. So once we see the fall of price to the downside, and then price doesn't react at this inversion fair value gap to give us bullishness, then what we're going to see is the dip of price here to the downside. We have that dip. If price violates the inversion fair value gap, then we want to see a pullback, and then we have bearish continuation to the downside here. So we have to wait to see the reaction of price. If price is going to give the bullishness here, or we could see price dip lower before price gives us the bullish continuation to the upside. So this is what I have to show us, guys, in the Euro USD. So let's check out the GBP USD pair. This is GBP USD, and this is a monthly time frame. So clearly here we can see price reacted at the rejection block and give us bullishness for the past 3 months, which we identify. And I called out this as a drawn liquidity, and we can see how price went above that. So this is still the monthly candle. We don't have the close of the monthly candle yet. So let's check the weekly time frame. So here in the weekly time frame, what we can clearly see is the bullishness to the upside. This is the monthly bearish fair value gap. So we have this as the drawn liquidity, this fair value gap we can clearly see here. And here we have the last sell movement before this bullishness that took out to this. So we have this breaker block zone here. So clearly I'm expecting to see the possibility of bullishness if the dollar index gives us that bearish continuation to the downside. So from the daily time frame here in the GBP USD, what we can see is the structural perspective also. We had this pullback, price fell, return, took out the inducement liquidity and the bearishness that broke structure. Now we can clearly see here we have volume closed above that, giving us what market structure shift. So clearly now we are looking forward to seeing the possibility of what bullishness to the upside. And here we have this down close candle before the bearish movement, which is in confluence to the weekly fair value gap zone we identify from the weekly time frame. So for the bearishness also here in the daily time frame, we have bullish fair value gaps. We have impulse to the upside. Yeah, this is going to serve as an inversion fair value gap. So clearly now we could see how price may dip lower into this zone, or price may go far lower into this fair value gap here in the daily time frame, the bullish fair value gap. And then we have what the possibility of what bullish continuation to the upside. So this is what I am looking forward to likely see the delivery in the GBP USD. So let's check the 4-hour time frame. And this occurrence might be long term. So I'm not saying that the bullishness will just kick off immediately and continue bullish, but then we could see the bearish reaction and the bullish movement. The bullish movement may not necessarily have to take this high that it has created. So clearly within the inversion fair value gap, here we can see we have this down close candle before the bullishness. So that is why I said we could see the possibility of what price reacting here to give us bullishness to the upside. So this is what I have to show us, guys, in the GBP USD pair. So this is just a very quick one. I'm actually having a very busy week, but then I said I just have to see what I can make available as just my forecast. So that is why I'm not going into deep details. So let's check out the gold pair, and then that will be the end of this forecast. So guys, this is gold from the weekly time frame. I've been making reference to this bullish fair value gap here in the weekly time frame. We saw that from the past 2 weeks, how we wanted to see bearishness into that, and then from that zone we could see bullishness. Then last week I told us to trade bullish and see how price react at the main threshold of this engulfing candle, and then we could see the possibility of what bearishness. But here we have what up close week. So let's get to the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame we can see, from the daily time frame we identify this inversion fair value gap. I called our attention to. I said we should trade bullish to that inversion fair value gap and see how price reacts to it. And price may give us a possibility of bearishness, because that is the main threshold of the bearish order block identified from the weekly time frame. And we can see how price traded to that particular zone, and we have this consolidated choppy price delivery. So in the 4-hour time frame, what we can see in the 4-hour time frame is by refining that inversion fair value gap here in the 4-hour, we have it here, because we can see we have this fair value gap. Price reacted at it and gave bullishness. broke through it, return, retest, fell to the downside, price return. And now we can see here we started having consolidation. Price was reacting at this zone and then the bullish fair value gap at the inversion fair value gap here, and then the bullish fair value gap here. So clearly now we can just see a choppy price delivery. If we're going to see bearishness in gold, then we could see how price breaks through this, and then we could see a retest and price falls to the downside. Or if we're expecting bullishness, then we'll be looking forward to see how price trades higher to the upside, and then we could see price return and we have bullish continuation. So guys, this is just a very quick weekly forex forecast. I just have to keep to it, and that is why you can see that I'm not going into other pairs or even looking at futures. So I'll just end this weekly forex forecast here, and I wish you guys a very profitable week. Cheers and God bless you all.